Gloria, thank you so much for joining us today. As we start, can you, for listeners who don't know you that well, can you talk a little bit about where you are uh, in your cybersecurity career and what's in your purview?
Sure. And thank you for inviting me. My pleasure. For those who don't know me, my name is Gloria Glaubman, and I'm currently the senior cyber advisor at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo. So I have the enviable position of working the U.S. and Japan alliance here in Tokyo. What does that entail? Really, it's a little bit of everything. It is everything from the most tactical activities and working with our Japanese partners to the most strategic. And so that includes everything from cybersecurity policy reform
Hmm.
to a whole of government approach to threat hunting to information sharing between public and private. And so it allows me the freedom to work across in between the different ministries and agencies, as well as linking in our U.S. government ministry or government agencies, if you will. Um, I have extensive background and experience in cybersecurity as well as managing big scale efforts in using AI, artificial intelligence, using the cloud in
Hmm.
order to draw out certain information from that data in order to make decisions and, of course, be proactive when defending our networks.
Hmm. Interesting. Well, that's very interesting. Not only you're in federal government, you are also stationed in Japan. So it's kind of the intersection of the two circles. It's a very unique position. It's fascinating. How did you get into cybersecurity? What was your first position? How did you get started?
Well, I started off as a computer network engineer. It started first coming out of the military. I was in the Navy.
Hmm.
And I ended up working at Bell Atlantic at the time, then Verizon. And that's really where I cut my teeth on
Hmm.
pivoting from computers, specifically from a network operations point of view, and
Hmm.
then into cybersecurity. And then my love for the topic and in this role just grew.
Hmm. Interesting. So how was so going from the private sector to federal government? How was this? How
Mm.
easy or difficult was this transition for you?
Well, the cultures obviously are different between private industry and the public sector, particularly the federal government. But the problems are the same. The tech is the same. So really, it wasn't that big of a shift as it relates to what the problem set was as it presented itself, and
Mm-hmm.
then what were some of the tools and what were some of the goals that we all needed to kind of rally around in order to protect, defend, be proactive as it relates to cybersecurity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, and with this in mind, is it kind of going from private to federal government, going from to federal government to private sector? So it sounds like some of the skills are specific to the area, but a lot of it is you can port your skills, you can port your experience, and it just as applicable, even though the context may be slightly different, but still it's identity and access, it's cloud security, some of the
That's
email security, phishing attacks, it's probably uh, orgs, whether in private sector or public sector, they're subject to similar type of attacks. Maybe
absolutely.
intensification of threat actors would be different depending on the value of the target from the attacker perspective, but the nature of the attack is probably conceptually similar.
Absolutely. I mean, the chain of command, the decision making between the two, between public sector and private sector, obviously there's some very significant differences. But again, we're running up against the same actors, whether it's the state actors or the criminal groups, and we're seeing the same PTPs, the same IOCs. We're fighting the same fight.
I see. Interesting. Well, from the vantage point of your career, what would be your advice for some of the junior professionals just getting started, either maybe coming out of the military or even earlier, maybe they're in college, just looking at the space or looking to make a transition from technology to cybersecurity? What would be your advice in general,
Mm,
and particularly for women? How to what, from your perspective, what do you wish you knew uh,
mm,
back then, and what do you recommend they focus on to set them up for success?
Sure. I can think of a couple of things. Probably, I talked about the difference between the culture in private industry and the public sector. And so, learn to speak the language of the business that you're in. So you can build the most secure system in the world, but if you can't explain how it protects, in this case, let's say private industry, how it protects revenue or reduces risk, you will not gain leadership buy-in. So security professionals who understand the goals of the business that they're in will have more influence and longer careers if you understand how to speak the lingo and the language of the decision makers, right? If you want a seat at the table, don't just talk about threats, talk about the outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is not to fall in love or don't get too attached to any one platform or tool. Because as we grow up, you learn to understand and embrace certain tools because they work really well. And sometimes you can just go a little too far. So technology matters, but tools change over time. Vendors
Mm-hmm.
come and go. But what lasts, what will last, is your understanding of principles. So
Mm.
understand how adversaries think, understand how attacks unfold, understand how to spot abnormal behavior. Master those fundamentals, not the brand names, and you'll stay valuable no matter where you go, no matter how the market shifts. Yeah.
Interesting. And what are your thoughts on, I don't know, things like certifications, finding a mentor, networking? How, in your experience, how instrumental were some of those venues for career advancement in general?
Sure, extremely important. I would not have gotten where I am today if I did not have mentors and sponsors who believed in
Hmm.
me and worked with me and kind of uh, help my trajectory in terms of leadership and where I've moved in my career.
Hmm.
Um, I do not have a certification, but I have the tenure and I have the background and the experience. And so I do believe they can be, it's fungible, right?
Hmm.
I do believe the importance of certifications because it shows that you're learned, that you understand. Again, back to the fundamentals. You understand the fundamentals, and you can apply them. However, on the flip side of that coin, having the background experience and showing that you've been applying it, even though you haven't gone and sat for the test, I think is just as valuable to companies and
Interesting.
organizations as well.
Makes sense. Well, it makes perfect sense. And also, sometimes people say, "Well, just pick I don't know, pick your lane. I mean, GRC, pen testing, red teaming, blue teaming, and go deep on one." And another school of thought is, as you start, try to get exposure to as many areas of cybersecurity, from less technical to more technical, and then decide which one to double down on. What are your thoughts on that concept? What would you recommend from your perspective?
I think it's extremely important to understand the big picture. So that
Mm.
means understand each component of the cybersecurity ecosystem, and then figure out what appeals to you and what you want to become have that deep expertise in. We do need experts in certain things. We do need experts in running a SOC. We need experts for threat hunting. We need experts for policy and reform. But
Hmm.
understand how all that fits together. That'll make you way more aware of where the industry is and where the industry is headed if you have the big picture.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And um, sometimes when people go up the kind of career ladder and they get promoted from, I don't know, individual contributor to kind of more of a leader in the manager position, this required set changes somewhat from technical skills writing code to more managing teams and also communicating across the organization and dealing with other department heads, which is it requires more softer skills and more kind of, to your point, understanding of the business. What advice would you have for people who kind of moving up in their career and they're excellent with their technical skills, but as they get promoted, they get challenged sometimes because they realize that what got them there is not going to get them to the next step, and they need to level up. From your experience, what would you advise for those professionals?
Balance is going to be key here. Um, because if you have aspirations of moving into leadership, you're right. You're going to have that emotional, you know, quotient, as they call it, EQ, and you're going to have to understand what it takes to be a leader. You have to be relatable. You have to make decisions. You have to all the things that we talk about in terms of key core skills for being a leader.
Hmm.
However, I think it's also equally as important, even though your fingers are not on the keyboard anymore, to stay current because you are still leading a technical team. So you still need to be able to understand what they're saying to you and provide them the guidance and the leadership so that um, they have confidence in you that you are a confident technical leader. So
Hmm.
I think you have to have the balance. Stay somewhat technical. You don't have to be the expert anymore. You have experts now.
Hmm.
But again, build the acumen, the leadership acumen that goes with that, and balance the two.
Hmm. Makes sense. Makes sense. Well, this is super helpful. Switching gears a little bit, one thing that I like about cybersecurity, there is never a dull day. There's always something going on. One day it's DeepSeek and people installing the application of their mobile devices, and CISOs are wondering if the corporate data is ending up on another
Mm-hmm.
country's servers and things like this. Another day, it's what tariffs going to do to my cybersecurity budget and how this is going to play out. It's never a dull moment. There are different attacks and changes in geopolitical changes that impact cybersecurity world on the corporate side and on the federal side. So it's constant motion, which is partially what makes it fun because it's not standing still, but it's also uh, creating anxiety and stress sometimes because it's really kind of challenging to prioritize what's important and what's less important. So, from
Yeah.
your perspective, what are some of the major themes, two, three areas that are top of mind for senior cybersecurity executives these days?
Well, I'll just extend what you just said, which is cybersecurity is nonstop. I mean, the adversaries are always active. The defenders, we feel like we're constantly on our heels. It's no longer about waiting for alerts anymore. It's about hunting the threats before they strike, simulating, breaches to stay sharp. But this kind of relentless pace comes at a cost. Teams are exhausted, they're overextended, they're buried in different noisy tools and conflicting priorities. And as you know, we don't have enough cyber professionals, right? So defending through effort and intensity, that's not a long-term strategy. So I think something we need to think about is how do we become smarter? How do our systems become smarter? And how do we create more sustainable approaches? And I think
Hmm.
this is where the next part of this answer is AI, right? Using AI to augment our activities and the lack or the gap of resources. And so looking ahead, um, I think our future in terms of cybersecurity, it's going to be defined by a convergence, the merger of traditional cybersecurity with the intelligent, autonomous AI systems.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, I think.
Can we double click on that? Because when CISOs and the FINI community talk about AI, it's really kind of three aspects of it. One is um, businesses deploying AI and often without security guardrails, and that's a concern.
Mm,
So that's how many models are running in your environment. People say, well, 50, and then you do the audit, and it's actually in the hundreds, and it's not clear how the data gets in and out, and where and who would get access to this. So that's kind of bucket number one. Bucket number two is exactly what you're talking about. It's AI enabled cybersecurity tools, whether it's um, using AI to alleviate alert fatigue for SOC teams, where AI can prioritize or deprioritize alerts and often remediate them without involvement of SOC analysts. So that's kind of the second bucket. The third bucket is AI tools using by attackers. So I've noticed that the phishing emails that I receive, and I'm just well, quote unquote a nobody in terms of the value of the target, I noticed the grammar has improved in some of those emails, and I can only imagine that um, some of the scanning tools and some of the phishing tools that use AI. I mean, any technology can be used for good or evil, and people guys they're standing still. They're using AI to make attacks smarter. So there's kind of like a battle of AI for good and AI for evil. So, and basically, what you're talking about is the second bucket, which is using AI for tools to make cybersecurity job more manageable and more effective. But can we double click and kind of maybe touch on all three of them since we're on that subject?
Sure, absolutely. I'll start on the dual use, if you will, of AI. Uh, it's right, good and evil, right? It's a powerful force for good in cybersecurity. It helps us detect anomalies. It helps us automate tasks
Hmm.
currently and scale defenses. But as you mentioned, at the same time, it's available to adversaries, and it is getting really good. AI is being used to generate malware. They're creating deep fakes now, and the social engineering, right, campaigns. We're all getting these text messages about packages and responding to this and that. It's getting to the point. It's really hard to detect if something is legitimate or if it's been developed by AI and it's trying to trick us. So this is definitely an arms race where both sides are leveraging AI to outpace each other. And the problem is innovation is moving faster than regulation, right?
Mm.
When it comes to artificial intelligence, right? There is no globally accepted norms or boundaries right now. I mean, we have suggestions. We had them, we didn't have them. There is no global accepted norms and boundaries. So
Mhm.
AI is becoming a threat amplifier, not just a defensive tool for us to use. We need the guardrails. We need governance. We need global cooperation before AI outpaces our ability to control it. I'll pause here if you have any questions, and I'll touch on the big data piece in a second.
Well, I think it's a very interesting topic, but because it's creating guardrails that are global, there's an underlying assumption that different countries are willing to come to the table and
Yeah.
not only agree on those common guardrails, but also abide by them. Because if you're in an adversarial relationship and you feel if you're reining in uh, innovation for good or evil, then you are at the risk of uh, staying behind. And if you don't, if you agree on paper, but then uh, covertly advance your AI systems, then it's to your point, it's an arms race. So
Yeah.
it we entering an interesting time where
Yes.
uh, what makes sense and reasonable may not necessarily come to pass. So it's certainly well interesting and scary at the same time. So maybe we can double
Mm,
click a little bit on that. What are your thoughts? I mean, especially since you have a unique perspective, not only as a federal government employee, but also you're in the region that's kind of uh,
that's right. That's right.
uh, it's very top of mind for a lot of people.
Absolutely. I mean, this is you asked earlier about from a geopolitical perspective, and this gets to the heart of it, right? So, the allied nations, because that's who we're going to be able to rely on and who we're going to be working with, need to come together and need to have a conversation and start thinking about how do we create cyber AI norms for the you know for our partners, for the alliances that we have, whether it's the Five Eyes plus the allied
Mm-hmm.
nations, Germany, Japan, etc.
Mm-hmm.
How do we come together and come to some kind of an agreement? And that also extends beyond not just how do we use AI or autonomous AI. It extends to offensive cybersecurity, right? So this is the
Interesting.
going back and hacking back. So when we determine that we have a situation and we need to blunt an attack, think Salt Typhoon, think Bull Typhoon, right?
Mm-hmm.
What are the cyber norms what are the red lines, I guess, is probably a better way of saying it. What are the red lines that we agree to that we don't cross that might cause a bigger issue for the world um, if another country, an adversary, let's just say, deems that we're doing an act that equivalents to a war,
Mm.
wartime activities. We don't have that today, whether with our allies or whether globally, internationally, with those who we may not get along with. It's a really deep conversation that I believe we need to start talking about because
Interesting.
we know we know how easy it is for a hacker to imitate and emulate another organization or another country to make it look like as if another country is hacking another organization, another country. And if you don't understand the forensics, the digital analysis, you may attribute that attack to the wrong actor. Again, this
Mm.
gets back to norms and how do we respond in kind.
Interesting. So a bad actor from a small and nebulous country can instigate an attack that may seem like an attack from one superpower attacking another and instigate a major conflict, and they're kind of behind the scenes looking for them, looking at them kind of going at each other, and they're the real culprit. It's interesting.
Yeah,
It's amazing. Scary world. Scary world.
it
Even
is.
though I think I saw in the news some 6 months ago that not necessarily AI related, but about some of the government agencies being forward deployed and using offensive tools to take down I know marketplaces for illicit substances that are hosted. I know in Europe somewhere, and obviously working in conjunction with the local agencies and taking down servers and arresting individuals. So it's certainly not without a precedent, this cooperation, but now it has more urgency uh, given the rise of AI and how fast the technology is being developed, kind of to make sure the good guys are understand that they're on one team and understand what the rules of the game are more so. It's way more important now than ever before, it seems like.
There's so much here in terms of what are the other types of tools that you can use when taking down, these types of organizations or these activities, and there are other things. There's coalitions, again, going back to our partners and doing threat advisories. We see FBI doing that all the time, whether they
Hmm.
do it with another country or different organizations here within our government. Just releasing that kind of information, saying we know who you are, you've done this, and here, and releasing to the organizations or the country the TTPs and say be on the lookout for this kind of activity. I think is also very valuable, as well as sanctions.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense. Well, I think it brings us to the next question is what's which you kind of touched on in many ways. What would the future hold for us? So
Mm,
if and it's probably kind of a little bit more of the same, but if we continue this kind of analogy and continue this topic and take it further, in if you got a crystal ball and you can see into the future, and 12 months from now, 24 months from now,
yeah,
what are some of the two, three themes that CISOs will be curious about, anxious about, obsessed about, in your view?
yeah. Well, um, the first one is I just want to reiterate the value and the future for autonomous AI and the cybersecurity piece.
Mm,
I think it was is just yesterday, CrowdStrike was releasing some folks. I think about 500 of
yeah,
their employees,
I saw
and
that.
this, yeah, there was an AI element to it, that they were going to start using AI to I guess perform some of the jobs, some of the activities, roles, and responsibilities. I think we're going to see more of that. I think we're going to see more organizations rely on autonomous AI without a human in the loop. It sounds like I'm not sure, so we'll have to check and see what happens there. But I see
Hmm.
that as a trend, as a potential trend. Um, as a follow on to that, I see because these agents are creating a lot of data. I think you're going to see a natural alliance with the cloud service providers because you've got to put that data somewhere and then you've got to exploit and analyze that data at machine speed. And
Hmm.
so got to understand what you're looking at in terms of signatures and what has happened and how to predict, if you will. So I
Hmm.
think we're going to see the cloud and data industry, big data industry, continue to grow because of AI and these agents. And then you're seeing a lot of movement of cybersecurity professionals between public and private right now.
Mm.
And I think we're going to see more boutique solutions, more boutique companies. So we have these very large companies that do great things, but I'm wondering if we're going to start to see these cyber professionals pull together and create their own small, medium businesses and focus. Going back to what you're talking about in terms of expertise, if they're going to start focusing on one thing and put that into the market.
Interesting.
I'm just really interested in it.
And
Yeah.
kind of on that last point, are you thinking more like VCSO roles where with all the experience and the expertise and connections from the public sector, you can really move the needle for a mid-sized organization that may have been relying on MSSP up until that
Mhm.
point, but they're thinking of bringing the things in-house, and the VCSO role will kind of help them transition. So those kind of engagements, or what do you think?
And we may see more you know uh, I'll call them advisors or consultants
Hmm.
moving between companies and providing services to get them off the ground more. And I know virtual CISOs is a thing, and it's very seems to be very polarizing for some people in terms of the value of a virtual CISO. Yeah, some people really love it, and some people think it's snake oil. But I think we might see more virtual CISOs. I see
Actually,
value in
a lot of FINIA members, there's fluidity, because someone who is a CISO on Monday could be a field CISO on Friday working for a cybersecurity vendor, and then a week later, I'm obviously exaggerating, but a short
it.
period of time later, they're a proud owner of Cybersecurity Consulting LLC, where they're doing VCISO role, and there's a kind of constant motion, and it's not kind of one direction; it's kind of bi-directional. So you see this, people are just looking for opportunities, and I know at times things could be challenging, but to your point, cybersecurity as the industry is growing, I know 30-35% a year. It's a rain or shine. It's like a recession, depression, uh,
Mhm.
notwithstanding, it just keeps on. And I think it goes to the point that someone made a while back, that as technology is playing more and more prevalent role in our lives on a personal level, family level, company level, country level, the surface that technology touches. I mean, we're talking about self-driving cars. We rely on things that are ones and zeros. So this attack surface is increasing, and as a result, the importance of security is increasing. So so naturally, there is, even though there may be certain temporal disconnects about supply and demand of professionals and executives versus jobs, but there was no doubt it's just on a long enough horizon it will self-correct. So there'll be plenty of opportunities for cybersecurity professionals to find. I don't think we'll ever run out of bad guys to fight. That's what I'm trying to say. And as we rely more on technology, the importance of that is only going to go up, no doubt.
I completely agree. And I'll add one last thing just popped in my head as we were talking is the importance of data privacy. It's still part of cybersecurity, but it's becoming more and more and more important because, as a lot of our businesses, big businesses, billion-dollar, trillion-dollar businesses, their lifeblood is your data. And I think on both sides of that coin, one, helping those companies protect your data, number one, and number
Mhm.
two, helping the consumer understand and protect themselves, I think, is also going to be something that we're going to see continue to increase in the future.
100%. Every time I go to a doctor's office, they ask for my social security number. I'm like, well, let me talk to your CISO. They're like, what?
That's right. That's right.
Awesome. Well, Gloria, this was so much fun. We should do this again. Where can people find you? Are you on LinkedIn and Twitter? What's the best way to connect?
Best way to connect with me is on LinkedIn, Gloria Glaubman.
Awesome, Gloria. Thank you so much. This was awesome. Loved it.
Thank you.